Hello, you're listening to part one of Robyn Rocket Zoom Zoom with Charles Hayward. My name's Robyn Rocket, I'm a space trumpeter, and this podcast series is edited interviews for my radio show. And in this episode, I'm chatting to Charles Hayward. Charles, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what you do?
My name's Charles Hayward. I've been making music all my life. I intend to make music until I die. I play drums and I write songs and sing. I'm a father and a grandfather. I try to let myself be the whole of me as opposed to a little packaged sort of rectangular box of me. So I let myself be an improviser. I let myself be a writer. I let myself be a collaborator. I let myself be a side man. I let myself just do what the gig tells me. I try and let myself experience all of life inside music.
I think you grew up in South London, is that right?
I grew up in Camberwell. My father had a beautiful collection of 78s. He was a prisoner of war. When he was a prisoner of war, he got to be friendly with a few of the Afro-American GIs, and they turned him on to American big band jazz. Before that, all he'd had access to was English, British dance music, which was like not giving him what he wanted, but it was the nearest thing he could find. But they turned him on to Count Basie and Duke Ellington and Art Tatum and Ella Fitzgerald. He came back and just built this collection before I was born, and then while I was, a young boy, of all this incredible jazz, which he played me from quite an early age. Listen to this. And my mother, she could play piano. She used to play the top line, the melody, and sort of thump on the bottom, a sort of rhythmic bass line that was very, like a cluster notes, more like a drum. I'd read the sound and hear it as, a bass line. It was just incredible how you bring yourself to the music. I can't remember not making sound, really. I can remember being like 18 months, 2 years old, playing pots and pans on the floor. There was a particular moment when I got given a present and I found myself playing the boxes rather than the present. I just sort of invented a drum kit out of boxes.
How old were you when you got your first drum kit?
I got my first drum kit when I was 10, and I think they thought it was going to be a fad, but it just became a sort of an obsession very quickly.
And at that point, had you had any lessons?
I'd already started playing piano when I was 4, so I knew a bit about that stuff, a bit. I had 2 batches of lessons. I had about 15 months with a guy called Brian Emery, who was a very good sort of West End club drummer. And then I saw Ella Fitzgerald and I was amazed by Ed Thigpen, who was Oscar Peterson's drummer. I waited to meet him, and I met him, and he was absolutely wonderful and very encouraging. And one of the things he said was that he was just going to go and see his teacher called Max Abrams, just to sort of work out a little tick he'd developed. He wanted to get rid of it. And I knew this name. This name was like the name. So in fact, I had 3 lessons with this guy who was one of the most horrible guys I've ever met. He was just horrible. But he taught me things that I ignored for about 10 or 12 years. And then when I went back to them, they were already there. He taught it very, very well.
And what kind of music were you making at school?
There was the 1947 Education Bill. Meant that if you passed your 11 plus very, very well, you might end up going to what we call now an independent school. So I ended up going to Dulwich College and being like a fish out of water the whole time I was there. There's weird contradiction between my parents' expectations, my parents' lifestyle, and what the school was about. So that was quite uncomfortable, because I did have a very, very privileged education, and it took me years to get rid of it. In fact, I'm still getting rid of it. I would wish that everybody could have what I had, basically. It's just like, if we talk about levelling up, then let's level up to that. But yeah, they had an amazing music department. I was in the school choir and I was in the school orchestra. Yeah, I played, percussion. Sometimes it was a triangle.
What was the first record you bought?
First record I bought, I think, was a Shadows record. I loved the Shadows. And then I really loved the way the Beatles wrote their own material and played all the instruments and sang while they were playing it, just the whole totality of it. Yeah, and then I heard The Who, Anyway, Anyhow, Anywhere, and nothing has ever been the same, really. Keith Moon on drums, Townsend just taking the guitar to a place that I'd never heard anyone take the guitar to before. A really, really elemental song, hardly any music in it at all, just pure sound. Lots of semitones, and open ringing notes, and just fantastic. They never hit the same space ever again for me. I kept going back to them, hoping they would, but they did some beautiful things, but nothing as visceral as that. My brother and I, we used to basically do what the middle bit of Anyway, Anyhow, Anywhere. We sort of took that as a model and forgot about the songwriting and just did that. So we would do that after school. We'd get home. I don't think we'd even get out of our school uniform. We'd sort of just play for like 3/4 of an hour, got work up this incredible sweat. My brother never learned to tune the guitar. He couldn't play he couldn't play a chord. He basically like used it like a noise machine. So when I worked with KG Haino about 40 years later or whatever, it was like playing with my brother.
What were the first gigs you went to as an audience person?
First gig I ever went to as an audience person would have been something with my dad, I think. It could have been Nat King Cole or Ella Fitzgerald. I went with my mum and dad to see Manfred Mann. Johnny Kidd and the Pirates were on as well. They were incredible.
What was incredible about them?
That they were sort of breaking this weird glass ceiling of the physicality of the music. Instead of it being something that was on stage and you sort of read like a book, it was actually coming out off the stage and wrapping itself around you, and was more like being in a room than just about telling you something.
And how else were you accessing music?
Also, there was this amazing record library, the Camberwell Record Library, just near the town hall. And some person in that place was just like some sort of a genius. They had Miles
Davis
and Ra,
Sun Ra
and Ornette
Coleman
and Coltrane,
John Coltrane,
alongside Stockhausen and the Bartok string quartets. There was this couple of rows of records where it was basically about how have we got to where we are now over the last 100 years. And it was just incredible. So I heard Schoenberg that way. I heard the Ornette double quartet record, Free Jazz that way. Stockhausen, Cage.
John Cage.
Fontana Mix, all via this record library. And then, of course, it was like, okay, there's this straighter stuff over there. What's going on over there? So I started getting into Monteverdi and Dowland and Tallis and sort of pre-Baroque music. I used to go there twice a week. I was devouring records.
Do record libraries work like book libraries?
Yeah, it was exactly like that. I think you could take out 3 at a time. It came with a box. And the box had a little diagram of a circle cut up into 8ths or 6ths or something, and it would mark any scratches that had happened. And so when you brought it back, it had to be in the same. You shouldn't really make a mark on it, and if you did, it was like noted. And if it was a bad one, you might get a fine. I was a bit religious about them. I thought this was such an amazing thing. I was very, 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 very respectful.
When did you first start being in bands or having your own bands?
I tried making groups when I was like 11 and 12, but they were just no good. All my pocket money, everything went on, all my Christmas presents, all my birthday presents were just basically drums, musical instruments, amplifiers, endlessly going around secondhand markets looking for bits and bobs for next to nothing. I shudder now. I'd get banjos and I'd saw off the neck and make them into drums. Everybody I wanted to work with had no obsession like that at all, and they were using my guitar and a guitar I bought on holiday. But then later, when I was about 15 or 16, I met 2 other guys, and they asked me to join their band, and they were a year older than me, and this was quite a big deal back then. And we started out playing very simple, sort of almost garage band, 4-chord, round and round and round things that we wrote ourselves, sort of like very early Pink Floyd inspired sort of things with a tune at the front and then some sort of a freak out. So one of these guys went on to join Roxy Music and the other one went on to join Matching Mole. They never accessed the music facilities at all. But in fact, Bill taught himself completely. I was there when he taught himself. I saw him go from not playing bass to playing bass. At first, it was called Pooh and the Ostrich Feather. Pooh with an H, I'll have you know, like Winnie the Pooh. Then we became Quiet Sun.
And did he play gigs?
Yeah, we did. We played, basically, we were playing in southeast London in sort of church halls and youth club halls and school dances for about, well, it was about a year that we did that, but it was absolutely fantastic. We built up this real sort of tribe of an audience and people really dug us and we were getting better and better and better all the time.
And then did you tell your school and your family you wanted to be a musician?
Well, there was a lot of expectation that I was going to be some sort of poet or writer or novelist or script writer or something or other. There was a lot invested around me that thought I was going to do that. When I was 15, for one night only, I had a play of mine performed at the Royal Court Theatre.
Wow. So how did that happen?
Well, that happened because I wrote it at school. The teacher thought it was really good and got it sort of performed by the class. And then other people saw it at the school and they thought it was really good too. And then this teacher, who later on completely dropped out from the whole system and changed his life completely, he just sent it around. The Royal Court, the director, whose name I think was William Gaskell, he thought it was good. And he put it on with another play that was a longer one written by a professional playwright. So this was a bit of a media deal. Basically, I did very, very badly in my O-level because I wasn't happy. The school let me stay even though I completely did not meet their standards for going into the sixth form. They sort of let me go into the sixth form. Within a year of being in the sixth form, I was trying to negotiate myself out of the college. I realised that I had this weird privilege thing and it was starting to really upset me. And I negotiated a meeting between the head of the history department and my parents, and I tried to get them to let me leave. But they just completely ignored me. It was like, that's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is you're going to work harder. Now I think people will listen to me, but back then things were different. But I knew I was aware of what I was experiencing. The word privilege is a word, when I heard it, then I went, oh yeah, right, that's the word. It was a very privileged thing and it didn't sit well with me. So then I was still not succeeding inside the school. I needed to get them off my back. So I told them I was going to be a teacher and I lied about going for interviews up in Wakefield and all over the place.
And then where were you really? Like, what were you doing when you would have been at school?
I did the proverbial looking in the back of the Melody Maker for musicians wanted and waited for the phone to ring and did that for quite a bit of time, really. There was two things going on. There was the music I really wanted to make, and there was also the fact that I knew I needed this sort of stuff that wasn't even really related to the actual music. It was more like getting in the back of the van, getting the stuff out of the van, doing a sound check. So I joined the Mojos and did what they used to call the chicken in the basket circuit. I played all these sort of like working men's clubs and Talk of the South, sort of top rank cabaret places. And so that was going on. Nobody in the band was quite the original band that was big in the 60s. The lead singer took over, and when he joined, the last of the original members left. The lead singer was also a Womble.
Well, we're going to leave it there for this episode, but if you want to find out how Charles started making the music he really wanted to make, then you can listen to part 2 of my interview with Charles Hayward. My name is Robyn Rocket, and you're listening to the Robyn Rocket Zoom Zoom podcast. The executive producer is Paul Dutnall, and we had funding from Arts Council England to make this project possible. You can find out more about me at www.robynrocket.com. My name is spelled Robyn. Bye-bye.